Hello and welcome back to Attacking Third, a CBS Sports Soccer podcast. Welcome back to Title IX Tuesdays. I'm Sandra Herrera, joined by Lisa Roman. We have chatted already with a handful of incredible women who are true game changers in their field, soccer, basketball executives, so many different folks. Today, we are very lucky to be joined by another incredible trailblazer in sports media. From CBS Sports Networks, We Need to Talk. You can hear her voice on NBA games, former sideline reporter and now NBA analyst. First solo female TV analyst for the NBA. We are so excited to welcome my Chicago homegirl to the show, Sarah Kustok. Welcome, Sarah.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sandra, Lisa. This is such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
We're hyped to chat with you. You know, we were really excited about this particular interview because it's like we're thinking about it. We're like, gosh, we're all women in sports media here, and we're so thrilled to be speaking with you, not just only for your career, but just obviously because there's a lot of common threads here amongst the three of us. You and Lisa both playing in the Big East Conference, Marquette, DePaul. I'm based in Chicago. I watched you on Comcast Sportsnet Chicago when you were covering Bulls, Hawks, White Sox, you name it all. So we were just hyped to get you on the show, and especially in light of us celebrating 50 years of Title IX. So we'll kick things off here with that. For you personally, what does Title IX mean for Sarah Kustok?
It means everything. It means everything. Most notably opportunity. And I think we continue to see how opportunities grow and what that means. And so many of us have the capabilities to be able to do as general as it is, whatever we want in life. And sometimes that comes down to sports. But I think the thing with Title IX is not just, I think we think about it with sports, it's education related to funding for research and just the different avenues that individuals want to go down to in terms of what they want to accomplish in their careers. And so, you know, I look back, I tell the story often, and it definitely dates me and makes me feel old. But when I was younger, and this isn't just Title IX related, but I played on boys teams mostly through middle school and then into junior high because there was a lack of girls programs. And so a lot of what I did, and I think it certainly in many ways benefited my skills in my basketball career. And I appreciate the warm embrace of so many individuals, and especially at that time, to be able to play on those teams, and whether it was basketball or whether it was baseball. But now you look at the numbers and the stats of young girls playing sports compared to what it looked like before. And I credit so much of who I am, what I am, not just, you know, in sports media, but in general as a person, the characteristics that sports help instill in you. And to me, that's why I love to see the opportunities for young girls, for junior high, high school, those that advance on to college, to be able to have that avenue to help grow themselves, not only as athletes, but as individuals. And so, you know, Title IX is everything. And I appreciate us celebrating it. And I am so grateful and so thankful for those who really fought to put this into action and to help make it happen.
You said it, opportunity is truly everything. And so much of it is seeing someone else in that role. We talked with a lot of different people about Title IX and seeing someone that looks like you, that has a similar background as you in that type of role. So we've spoken with athletes, Olympians, executives, but this is sports media conversation now. And as a female in sports media, which is traditionally known as a male dominated industry, when you look back at your career, kind of what got you started in sports media? Why did you want to get into this field?
Lisa, that's an excellent question, because I did not want to until I was somehow thrown into it and hit the ground running. I did get my, in college at DePaul, I got my degree in communications, but I got my master's in corporate and multicultural communication. So it was less about broadcast or less about journalism. But while I was in my fifth year finishing on my master's, I had the great opportunity to be essentially a production runner for ESPN in their Big Ten football games. And it was the first time that I understood exactly how a production came together, how a show came together in broadcasting a sporting event and being in the truck. And for me, the only thing that I ever, you know, was truly driven by and passionate about was sports and playing sports and competing, and the concept of, you know, when the ball is tipped or when the light goes on, to be able to have that idea of you are competing and there's success, there's failure. And when there is failure, you learn from it, you grow from it, you're challenged. The preparation that goes into it, all of that feeds my soul in a way that when I saw how a live broadcast event was put on, I'm like, man, this is something I want to chase down. You could be a part of this and be around sports. And so that's where it triggered me to try and figure out, okay, how do I incorporate this into the path that I go down for a actual profession? And so those are the things about, for as much as there is so much within the concept of broadcasting and journalism that I love, as I talked about the preparation, the research, I've always loved to write. But it's that sporting nature and it's that adrenaline rush that you get. And it is the concept of, you may have a great show and you may have a terrible show, but that drives you to get better and that drives you to grow and that challenges you. And I live for challenges. Like that to me is the essence of what I always want to be a part of my life, something I'm passionate about and something that challenges me. And that's exactly what sports broadcasting did.
I've never heard someone articulate it as well and specifically like that, because there's nothing like hearing the whistle blow at the start of a game and the adrenaline you get from that. But seeing the red light go on of a camera and knowing that you're live, it's a close second. I love how you articulated that. So since you got your start and your days as a runner with ESPN and kind of seeing the back end of it up until where you are now, specifically as a female on We Need to Talk, which is a women's hosted show for CBS, how have you seen the industry evolve since your start?
Oh, immensely. Thank goodness, but immensely. And there's still a lot of room to grow, but I think we're at the point almost, we talk so much about, I think it's normal, or it had been normal to say a more male dominated field. Now I turn on the TV for any, whether it's sports broadcast, whether it's a game, whether, it's a show, and women are visible. They are upfront, and it is all varieties of roles. And to me, that's what I love most. The concept of so many different roles that are starting to be, myself in the NBA and the analyst role. But now this season, we've seen females in the play-by-play role. This spans across, I know we're talking about sports broadcasting, but just being around sports in the NBA or NFL now, those on coaching staffs or sports performance teams, front office, you name it. But overall, just continuing to see women being able to have it be their choice to, okay, what position do I care about most? What drives me to, whether it is play-by-play or whether it's an analyst role or whether it's a reporting role, and not necessarily be shoeboxed into, oh, you're going to just do this role, or this is where we're going to fit you in because this is relegated to where we think a woman should be in this show or on this broadcast. And so I think the opportunities have grown for positions. I think it's all about competency. And now it's looked at as who is the best individual to fill this, regardless of male or female. And I think, again, like I said, there's still steps to be taken. There's still a lot more room to grow. But I think from the time I started and got into this business and to where we are now, and the perception of it, the view of it, and that's what I love most about all of this. And I know Sandra and Lisa, you two are right behind this and probably feel the same way. I love the fact that the next generation and younger, it's not just about younger girls, feeling like they could do anything they want to do or be anything they want to be in the broadcast world. Younger boys look at it the same way. Younger boys that talk to me about my role, they don't look and say, wait a second, you're a female in this role and we're not used to, they're used to everything, so growing up, it's a part of what they see, and it's a part, and whether they like you or don't like you or think you're great or think you're garbage, it's not because more often than not, or I think we're getting to that point, it's not as much about because you're a female or you're not a male or this or that, because people, if you think certain things or, this is a very subjective business. But I think we're continuing to inch towards that idea of it being less gender-based. And more just on the competency or about the performance of what you do.
I want to maybe stay with some of this energy for a little bit, because in conversations that we've had with other guests on Attacking Third regarding Title IX, we've discussed, moments of gender discrimination, of uncomfortability. And when you're talking a little bit about this current generation, learning from the previous generation, right? there been moments in your life or career specifically where you yourself have had to experience those moments of uncomfortability or gender discrimination specifically?
That's a great question, and one that I always struggle to answer, because in one vein, I would say, yeah, like absolutely, hundreds and hundreds of times. And that's a part of it. And it's a part of, I would say something that I've had to deal with, that many women have to deal with, that many individuals have to deal with in a variety of ways. But I also think it's something that for me, it does not cross my mind, and it hadn't crossed my mind. And I try not to let it factor in. I think back to as a kid growing up, as I mentioned, I played on the boys basketball team, and I played in a tournament in Chicago that it was, all public schools, private schools. I was the first girl to play in it. I was a sixth grader, it was 6th or 7th, or I should say maybe 7th grade. So I was 13, and, around, and I'm sure there was things that happened then, being the only girl, but it wasn't about that to me. It was about, are you good enough to be on the hardwood? Are you good enough to be on this court? Are you good enough to play? And that to me at the end of the day was, okay, if I have the confidence to know that I deserve and I belong to be here based on the skills that I have, that I'm cool with that. And that's, I think, something that has continued to be a part of me in all aspects, and in particular in this business. And I think you could look at sports broadcasting, but this really spans any career or any profession. I'm sure, you look at a lot of them. I think that's not always an easy thing to have, but I always hope for that for any young individual, or any individual that feels a way, like if you have put in the work, if you have prepared, if you know that you are good enough or belong to be in whatever area and arena, then let the noise pass you by, because that shouldn't matter, because that's about someone else and their perspective, and it shouldn't be about yours. And so I think, with that being said, I'm sure there are, Sandra, a million instances, and there are to recognize, but I think those are the things you box up and you put to the side, because you don't have time to waste on that. Things are challenging enough and hard enough, and you got enough on your plate with the work and the things that you have to do. And those are the type of things that I think, as you continue to grow in your career, or as you continue to just grow in general, trying to find ways to put those to the side, or to handle it, or to attack it in a way that best suits you, is just things that you navigate for yourself.
When you think about your own experiences, and when you sort of hear these younger folks sort of coming to you, whether they're asking you for advice or whether they're asking for support, what type of advice or support would you give to a younger person if they do come and sort of maybe talk about some uncomfortabilities that they're facing within the space?
Yeah, I think it's all situationally based. The one thing I circle back to, and I circle back to this a lot with everyone, is figure out what matters most to you. Like, figure out what is most important to you. And I always say this when I started in this business, and it was one, as you mentioned, what I wanted to get into. Like, there are so many aspects of it that I was so just enamored by and knew I wanted to be a part of. But there's also a lot of things in this business that I was like, oh, wait, no, like this, you got to have a thick skin, and you got to be ready for criticism, critique, all of that stuff. And so I learned early on, and this is probably something early on in life, like what matters most to me is how I treat people and the person that I am. So at the end of the day, no matter what you think about me as a broadcaster, no matter what you think about the job I did, how did I treat people, and how did I treat people in the space I was around? And if I was a kind person, if I was a good person, those I work with, my colleagues, those around the building, you name it, if I acted and treated them in a way, and act in a manner, and represent myself as a person I want to be, that I could wake up every morning, go to bed every night feeling good, and like I was successful in that day. And everything else, you just kind of put it aside. And again, easier said than done, as you know, and maybe others won't always treat you in kind or the same way back. But to me, it's all about just focusing on what your main priority. And my main priority is to do my best to lift others up, or do my best to try and be good to others. And when that's done, then I'm cool. And I think that's my focus. And so I would tell any other individual that's aspiring in the sports broadcasting world or anything, whatever you can do to focus on what matters most to you, try and focus on that. And again, it circles back to, you can't always control how others treat you. You can't always control others' opinions on you or how they feel, but you can control the effort you put in. You can control the attitude you bring, the work you do, the preparation you do, and how it is that you go about behaving around others. And you control the controllables. And after that, you just try and let the rest go.
Sarah, you are leading the way, and you are an acting, walking role model for a lot of young people and just people in the industry. As the first solo female TV analyst for the NBA, what challenges or pushback did you face as the analyst in the NBA, whether it was from executives, coworkers, or even fans?
Yeah, you know what? I think in general, it was positive. What I will say is the focus for me was about understanding the responsibility that came with it. Mm-hmm. And so as I'm sure you two can tell, I'm not one to hold on to or think much about those that there was pushback or maybe had negative thoughts or acted in different ways. But what I focused on was the great responsibility that I was so excited about, humbled by, and grateful for, to know that hopefully this would lead to others getting the same type of opportunities. And not a day goes by that I don't think about Doris Burke or Ann Myers Drysdale or those in other roles or positions that were so good and worked so hard that laid the foundation to allow me this opportunity. And so when I think about, when I first got the job, just the responsibility of, girl, you better put in the work and be good enough that others have this opportunity behind you, and that it moves from being a novelty to more the norm. And I think we've started to see that, like you see it across the board, and whether it's game analysts, studio analysts, the NBA, it's in a lot of different roles, and that's what I love. And so I think early on it was just that concept, because I did some interviews when those first announced that I had the job, and just different things. And people asked about pressure or just kind of how that bears out in being the first in that situation. And to me, that's what I said. I said, one, I love pressure. I live for pressure. That's what it's about, but it's not pressure. It's understanding the responsibility of what it meant and what it could mean for those behind you. And I so badly wanted others to be afforded the same opportunities that I was, thanks to those before me that help afford me the opportunity. And so that's the hope, that's the goal, I think, for all of us in this space and in this business.
I wanted to ask you something maybe adjacent to the NBA, especially because of our local ties that we share. You do so much work with the NBA. Were you able to take your reporter hat off and put on a fan cap at all when the Chicago Sky were making a run in the playoffs for WNBA? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Oh, girl, I was so excited. Well, let me first say I was fortunate enough for a few seasons to call the Connecticut Sun games. I'm around with the Brooklyn Nets. I'm around the New York Liberty as well, and get to go to some of their games, Chicago Sky. Additionally, I always keep tabs on for many reasons. But in particular, I know Candace Parker came back and she was a little bit behind me in high school, but Allie Quigley, DePaul, my fellow DePaul sister, who I'm just so proud of her journey and her story. And in watching her, I was actually an assistant coach when she first came to DePaul. And I tell this story. I should stop telling the story because she's the best of the best. But I was her host on her recruiting trip. So I would always tease Doug Bruno, the coach at DePaul, and say that Allie came because I was such a good host, which is definitely not the case. But I love Allie, and she's one of my favorites. But so watching her and just everything about that team, and I think the most exciting part of that was just the attention and the exposure and the excitement around it. And we've really seen just how much, within the course of the past couple of years with the W, how much more and more people and just the support has been given. Now, hopefully more dollars being poured into it. But I just think across, across so many levels, you see just how much excitement, and especially the hometown team in the sky. And as I said, with Ali and the DePaul ties and all of those things, I was just so much fun to watch and so cool to just really get a grasp of what that meant, not only for the organization, but for the city.
So Sandra got to ask her fun Chicago question. Now I get to ask my fun question that I'm so curious about. You've worn so many different hats: NBA, WNBA, MLB, sideline reporter, analyst, host. And you talked about how you like a challenge. Which role for you is the most challenging in sports media?
Whew. I will still say I would roll, first of all, in terms of sport, like that's to me, that especially early on in my career, when I started getting into media, a lot of it was basketball based or football based. One, that was my background. And I actually started in a lot of analyst roles with like high school basketball, the Illinois high school boys and girls state championships, and then the IHSA same football championships. But then I did indoor lacrosse, MLS, like covering the Blackhawks. I had never before, and that was such a major part of my growth in the profession, but covering the Blackhawks in hockey, and then working for versus doing some national NHL games. I had never, to be honest, I'd never really watched the NHL, didn't know a lot about it. So with a lot of those sports and games, like just to me, the big challenges are when you're somewhat comfortable with a game in a sport, but then you start to cover it and you're like, there are so many nuances and details and just the deep diving. And so the questions and the conversations and how much appreciation you have for coaches that are willing to give you more insight, players that are giving you more insight, the more you watch, the more you talk to others around those leagues. One, I think a challenge when you're covering a different sport that you're not as familiar with. But in terms of roles, I still to this day, I think sideline reporting is the most challenging, because you need to know everything about everyone. You need to have all this information. You need to have all these stories. And you will probably use 3% of all the work in the hour. Yeah, 3% would be. And so not only that, but then tack on the fact of, okay, you're going to do this and you got 15 seconds to you have an amazing story that fits so well. And so you're selling it in a broad, so you need to find the timing and how it goes together. And does this player, did someone perform well? Because it's a great story and this all comes together. And then, okay, go. And you got 15 seconds between a snap or, between a possession or whatever it is, to make sure you get in exactly those critical points and to make it sing, and then tie it in a bow and toss it back. And same with some of the walk-off interviews. They're just a situation, like people don't know halftime. I remember even, some of the first and second, intermissions with NHL stuff, that is, people don't know that you were jumping through these hoops and climbing through this, and the audio and this went out and you couldn't hear this. And like, there's so many factors that I think viewers or people have no idea. And you're watching someone be calm, cool, collected, delivering a report or doing an interview or something. And it's like, man, you have no idea what goes into that. And so to this day, I still am really fortunate to be able to do sideline for NFL games on Fox. And I love it with my whole heart. One, I love the NFL, and two, I just, the atmosphere, everything, and being on the field. And I love so much about it, but it reminds me and humbles me every time I'm doing it, that it's like, wow, there was so much credit, not to mention, especially too, when you're outside, the elements of it being, 10 degrees or 100 degrees or raining or this or that. So yeah, without a doubt, that to me is and will always be, I have so much respect for that, because it is a hustle.
So the most challenging role is the sideline, but which one do you like the best?
Oh, the analyst role is my everything. I love the variety, and even hosting or even, studio analyst stuff. Like I am so thankful and appreciative. You talked about We Need to Talk. That show, I have a podcast, NBA Flashbacks, so doing a little different stuff with iHeart and with the NBA. There's all different roles that I'm so thankful to still be able to do and practice throughout the course of different seasons. But the analyst role and in the NBA is something that is all of my greatest loves wrapped into one. And to me, that's something where I just, every time I sit in that chair and every time I'm watching a game or even just the preparation that goes into it, that's it for me, where I can't say enough how much I just gain so much happiness and joy out of doing that.
I love that. So many different roles and moving parts. We celebrate that here in Attacking Third because we often have to keep things moving on the show. But this has been a joy to chat with you, and something that we've been doing with all of our guests here as we close out episodes is we've sort of ended on a bit more of maybe a reflective question as we continue to celebrate Title IX. We've come a long way in the last 50 years in terms of gender equality, and there's always work to be done. For you, how much further do you feel we need to go, and what are maybe some of your dreams for hopefully the next 50 years?
Oh, 50 years. I hope that whatever dreams I could articulate now, in 25 years, we are wildly past, and that we probably right now can't even envision what it looks like and what it will feel like for the next generation of young girls and young women as they continue to grow and have more opportunities. And I love how much we celebrate women. I love how much we celebrate this and Title IX and so many of the different firsts, or the people, really making strides and giving each other opportunities. But my goodness, I cannot wait for the day that, there are certain areas or certain jobs or certain things that's the last thing we're talking about. And that some little girl 20 years from now is like, wait, what do you mean? Oh my gosh, like you couldn't do this. A girl wasn't doing this. And those are my hopes. That it seems so wildly crazy for a woman or for a girl to think about the fact that these opportunities didn't exist before. And I hope that happens, and I hope we get there, and I hope we continue just to move forward in all areas.
I love that. Sarah Kustok, thank you so much for joining and sharing your story with us. And we also like to thank our listeners. So thanks to our audience for joining us on Title IX Tuesdays. You can follow us on Twitter at Attacking Third for more. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to your podcast shows. We're also available as video. Subscribe at youtube.com/Attacking Third. And thank you everyone for joining us once again. For Sandra, Herrera, Lisa Roman, and Sarah Kustok, this was Attacking Third.